Welcome everyone to the webinar. This is Getting Organized, Simple Ways to Declutter Your Online Life. My name is Paul Novak. I'm the founder and program director here at Iris Reading. I want to thank you all for coming out today. There's a lot of different things that can be said about like productivity and organization. And we're not going to talk today about like organizing your desk or organizing your room. This is about, organizing your online life, because it's very easy to get overwhelmed when you're dealing with a lot of digital data. I know I've had messy. This is not a screenshot of my of my wallpaper, but I've had desktops that have looked like this in the past when I've used a PC or a Mac. Sometimes the desktop gets a little unruly, and if you ever have a situation that happens like this, yes, it's time to start getting a little more organized. That's going to be the topic of today's webinar. By the way, one of the things I like to do sometimes, this just causes anxiety if I have way too many things on my desktop. So at some point, I'll reach a tipping point where I say, you know what, let me take all of this stuff and just put it in one single folder called old desktop or messy desktop. And I'll put all my junk in there, because otherwise, every time I got to stare at this, when you fire up the computer, it's going to cause a little bit of anxiety. It's going to make you feel overwhelmed. So at some point, I understand that a lot of people like to leave things on their desktop because it's sometimes easy to find them there. But at a certain point, you hit a tipping point where it becomes a little too much. Now, there's also the issue of having sometimes too many programs or tabs open. You ever have like a ton of tabs open and you just can't find something, or maybe you've got multiple tabs open, multiple browsers open, multiple programs open, and this is where, as you probably know, if you open too many programs, your computer starts to slow down because it's using more resources. One of the most important things if you're trying to get yourself organized online, try to keep the bare minimum open. I know sometimes we leave things open because we want to look at the information later. We're going to talk about some simple ways to deal with things that we have to refer to later on. Some easy way to save things, whether it's web pages or it could be articles that you want to read later, maybe emails. And also very important, just like having too many programs open at the same time slows down your computer. Trying to do too many things at once will slow down your productivity. You ever have a whole day where you felt you were extremely busy, but you felt like you got nothing done? And I've had days like this. I think all of us have, where this is usually what I've found in the past is that this is an issue of me maybe doing too many things at once, maybe multitasking too often. And study after study is showing that multitasking usually leads to less productivity as opposed to single tasking. When I say single tasking, I mean focusing on one thing at a time, because what happens is if you're working on 2, 3, or 5 different things at a time, there are these, they call them like switching costs. The amount of time when you switch from one thing to another, how there are some things that require a lot of brain power and like focus. If you get distracted away from it because of an email, let's say notification that came up, sometimes it takes a few minutes for you to get back into the groove of what you were doing, maybe working on a very intensive project. So try to focus on one thing at a time. What we're going to cover in this webinar, our objectives are very simple for this webinar. As you know, Iris Reading, we deal with speed reading. We help people read faster. We help them improve their comprehension, their memory. So one of the first things we'll talk about today is organizing your reading. So when we're talking about your online life, there's a ton of I think I do 80% of my reading just on the computer screen. Now, when I was in school, I'd do a lot more, reading of physical like textbooks. But now that I'm done with school, most of my reading is online. So we'll talk about organizing your reading. We'll also talk about organizing your tasks. Now, I'm going to go over a variety of things and applications and tools that I use that work well for me. I am in no way suggesting that this is the way that absolutely every single person should go. But what I hope to do is show you a number of different options, and I hope that some of these options you'll find useful as well. And if you do, I think they'll provide you with a way to better organize yourself online. So we'll talk about organizing your tasks. Also, what about your email? That's a huge part that all of us have to deal with. Tons and tons of email. We'll talk about how to stay on top of our email, respond to people faster, and just really stay organized with it, because some people get a ton of email on a daily basis. It's the same thing for me. And we'll also talk about organizing your thinking. When you're online, there's a variety of things you might be dealing with: tasks, email, things that you have to read, things that you have to do for work, for school, personal. So we'll go over all of these 4 topics in this webinar today. So let's start with organizing your reading. First thing I want to go over is saving articles for later. So there's a number of programs that do this. You could bookmark things. There's a lot of bookmarking programs out there. One of my favorite is Pocket. And by the way, all of the programs that I'm talking about in this webinar, all of the apps that I mentioned, the tools that I'm using, Iris or myself, we do not get any kind of financial incentives for recommending these things to you. I'm just mentioning these in the webinar because they're things that I use on a daily basis or things that our organization uses and things you might find helpful for organizing your online life. So one of those things is Pocket. I want to show you how Pocket works. It's just a very simple way to organize, and save your articles for later. So let me go to the browser. Let's say you were on a website, and remember how we talked about opening too many things in tabs? Let's say you started opening a whole bunch of things in tabs. You're like, open this in a tab, open this in a tab, open this in a tab, and you're just getting a little tab happy here. You keep clicking and opening things in tabs. And just every single article is interesting here. All of a sudden you realize you've got like 30 or 50 or 100 tabs open. And then you realize, what? I don't have time to read all these tabs. I actually should I don't have time to read all of this up, but I want to read it later because maybe all these articles are very, very interesting. So that is where that application that I mentioned comes in. If you go to getpocket.com, this is a free application that you can use to save articles for later. And here's how it works. Here's an article right here. I want to save it for later. I can just click on the Pocket button right here, Save to Pocket, and that will save it to my Pocket account. Now, how did I get that button up there? If you go to getpocket.com, they'll recognize what browser you're using. I'm using Google Chrome right now. You might be using, Safari, Internet Explorer, Firefox, or if you're using Google Chrome, you get whatever bookmarking tool, this button right here. And then if I want to read my article later on, I go to getpocket.com, and that article will show up right over here. So you see, this was the article I saved for later. I can click on it, and now it'll give me on a nice clean white background that article. When I'm done reading this article, I can just click the check mark to archive it, or I can trash it if I don't want to see it again. Of course, you can also tag it, favorite it. I'm going to put in the archive right now, and it'll show you whatever other articles you've saved for later. Now, the nice thing about this tool is you could actually save these offline. If you're using the iPhone, Android, or iPad app, you can save these articles offline and they'll be stored on your device. So for me, this comes in handy if I'm traveling and let's say I'm not going to have a connection when I'm on the plane and I want to catch up on some of these articles that I saved earlier. Well, if I've got them saved offline, it's easy for me to connect and read these articles very quickly. So this is how we deal with Pocket. Now, remember earlier I told you want to limit the amount of programs you're using. These are the programs that I have set up right now. You want to keep it to a bare minimum. The only programs I have open right now are the ones I need for this webinar. I need Google Chrome, I need PowerPoint, I need this GoToMeeting application because that's what we're using to broadcast this, and I also need Evernote. More on Evernote in a moment here. So let's go back to the slides. We're just mentioning Evernote. What is Evernote? For those of you not already familiar, Evernote helps you save a bunch of things, not just articles. You could definitely use this to save your articles later, but you could use this for saving audio notes. It works on all mobile devices, all desktop, laptop, tablets. The nice thing about Evernote is it's a very robust program, and there are a lot of different ways you can use it. If you're a student, you can organize all of your homework in here, all of your study notes. If you're a business professional, you can use this for a variety of reasons. You can use this to manage your tasks, save articles for later. Let me show you how that works. If you're using Evernote, again, Evernote is another free program. Like a lot of these programs, they have a free version, and then they also have a premium version. I think about 90% of their users are free users. But if you go to Evernote and you sign up here, you can use they have a lot of different implementations. So let me show you one. Remember I said we were talking about saving articles for later? Let's say we take this article again, and I want to save this article for later on. Let me close some of these tabs because I get a little anxious if I get too many tabs here. Some people love I used to have way too many tabs open all the time, and then it just got a little overwhelming. If you want to save this article for later using Evernote, there are Evernote extensions or add-ons for Firefox. There's an extension for Chrome, as I have up here. I can just click on this right here, and I can save this for later. Now, Evernote organizes things into something, instead of folders, they call them notebooks. So let me explain what I mean by that. This is one notebook called Read Later. So I could just say, all right, save the article. It'll recognize this is just the portion of the page that is the article. I can hit save, and that is now clipping the page, and it is clipping it specifically into my Evernote account. Now, we have a question, by the way, coming in from Alicia. I want to deal with the question about Pocket. Can Pocket handle YouTube as well? Yes. Nice thing about Pocket, they started off just with saving articles, and they've also expanded to where you can save videos from YouTube. So you can definitely do that as well. Another thing that you can do, it's all dependent on how you want to set it up. For me, I use Evernote to watch to save videos later. I just click on, let's say there was a video on this page, or let's say I was on YouTube, I would click here and then I type watch later, and I have a little notebook within my Evernote called watch later, and I would save videos there. But again, it all depends on where you want to save your information. That's why I wanted to show you both options, because some people love using Pocket for saving articles and videos. Some people prefer to save all their videos and articles through Evernote because that's where they put all their stuff. So let me show you Evernote real quick. Now, this is my Read Later folder. As you can see, it says right there, Read Later. Might be a little small on your screen, but this is a number of articles that I wanted to read later. This actually will sync every so often, and if you notice right here, here's the article right up here that I saved for later on. So here we have the article, and when I'm done reading it, I can just delete it. Usually a lot of these articles that I save for later are just to read once and be done with them. If you want to save articles for later, you can create a reference notebook or articles read notebook. So Evernote is very easy to customize. Oh, we had a question coming in from Stacy. How did you see the applications that were open on your screen? So for me to do this thing right here, I think that's what you're referring to. On a Mac, I am using Command and Tab. So that is Command and Tab. So again, for those of you that were wondering, how do I switch between programs? That's just holding down the Command button and then pressing Tab. I think if you're using a PC, you have to use Control and Tab. But it's just a quick way to switch between applications. So if I want to go back to PowerPoint, I just go like this, and I am back here in my PowerPoint. That's another thing, by the way. If you want to, this webinar is about organizing your online life, but part of being organized is making sure you're doing things efficiently. One of the things that it's like a little hobby of mine, is discovering little keyboard shortcuts that can make my online life a little easier for me. So, I've got a comment coming in. Thank you for mentioning that. This is Control Tab lets you shift between tabs on Google Chrome on a Mac. Yes, this is another very useful, and Safari. So this is another thing. Definitely look up. So right now I'm hitting Control Tab, Control Tab, Control Tab, Control Tab, Control Tab. Notice how I'm just flying through these different things. If I want to jump from one tab to tab number 4, I just go Command 4 or Command 1. So there's a lot of different keyboard shortcuts. One of the things I recommend you do, whatever programs you use very, very often, search on Google for, let's say you're using Google Chrome all the time as your browser. Search for Google Chrome shortcuts. Or search, if you're using, let's say you're working in an office and the email system is Outlook. Make sure that you search for, Outlook shortcuts. Or if you're using, let's say, Gmail, there are a variety of Gmail shortcuts. Actually, more on that in a little bit. But we're talking about Evernote, and the reason why I want to mention Evernote is because I've used Evernote to record audio notes. There's a mobile app if you're using Android or an iOS device. You can use the mobile app. It works on a tablet. You can take pictures of things. Actually, I use it a lot for saving a variety of things. We'll go into that later when we talk about managing your tasks. There is one other way that you can organize your reading. This is by using an RSS reader. One such example is Feedly. This is one example that you can use. There are a lot of different RSS readers out there. This is one of the more popular ones, and it's got a nice clean interface. So let me show you that real quickly. And for those of you that are familiar with some of these apps and tools, I know there's a lot of different tools and competitors to this. I think this is one of the more popular ones, so that's why I want to feature it here on the webinar. But if there's one that you use that you think is much better than this, by all means, I'll have my contact info on the screen at the end, and you want to make some suggestions, I'd be happy to. I'm always curious to know what kind of productive apps and tools people are using. So here is Feedly. Now, this is a free application that you can use. If you want, you could just hit OK, start reading. Now you can add things based on your interests here. And how do you save them for later? Well, you just got to log in, and you can log in using Google. You can log in using Facebook, Twitter, or even Evernote down here I see. I'm going to click using Google. It'll pull up my account. I'm going to click on this account right here, and that will log me in. And now I can say, all right, what are my interests? You could either do one of two things here. You could pick from some of the different highlights here, like if you're interested in business or startup or fashion, photography, whatever, or if there's a certain website that you like to keep track of information. So if you wanted to keep track of stuff from the Iris Reading website and you just type Iris Reading, you can click on that and you could add it to Feedly like this. Now you just hit add right here. Let's say you also keep track of the Wall Street Journal. I could type Wall Street Journal. Oh, sorry. We go add content. Wall Street Journal. Now, the Wall Street Journal has a lot of different feeds. So, there's world news, there's business, there's markets, opinion, economy. So you gotta pick one that you're interested in. So let's say I'm interested in markets. I can click add right here. And let's say I'm also interested in personal technology. This one right here, I can add that as well. Now, here's what Feedly is doing. It's organizing all your feeds on the side here. You see this little side area? Now, it will automatically organize these into, they notice that Wall Street Journal, that's obviously a business topic, economics over here, financial, but you can click on all and it'll show you all of your articles right here very quickly. Now, some websites will only show a snippet. Some websites will show the entire article. It depends on the site. Basically, the site has to give permission to RSS readers. Some sites will give full access to the articles. Other sites, they want you to click through and get to their page so they could get that, so they can get money from the advertisers and the screen, the number of impressions on the screen. So you can add a lot of things here. One of the things I like to do when I'm using Feedly is organize. Basically, you take all the web pages that you usually go to, and you can add them here. The way you add content, again, click add content, and then just type whatever website it is right here, or even a topic. And it'll usually find any kind of website if it has an RSS feed. Most modern websites do have RSS feed, so it'll be able to pull articles from there. And rather than visit that same site every single day, you can, let's say there are 20 different sites that you like going to, you could have all 20 of those sites delivering the articles into one single place, and then you just got to click on all, and you'll get all of your information right here. So it's a nice way to organize your reading. Next thing I want to go over, if you want to organize your reading, another thing you can look into is there's a lot of news aggregator apps that are out there. I'm highlighting 4 very popular apps. I've used all of these and they're all very helpful. So, most of these have both versions, iOS, if you have an iPhone or an iPad, or an Android device, these will work. You can check these out whenever you get a chance. The nice thing about these, a lot of these will help you, some of these have functionality that works with tools like Pocket. Now, I have a question coming in here. Will Pocket not work with extensions that block ads, such as AdBlock? Having issues saving articles because of that. You know what? Good question. I actually use AdBlock Plus to block ads. For those of you not familiar, the question was, this is AdBlock Plus right over here. And what that'll do is if I go to websites, like let me go to The Onion, which is a satirical news site. Normally, The Onion does not look like this. Let me show you what The Onion looks like. I'll go into incognito mode here. We'll go to The Onion. Usually The Onion's got ads. You see at the top over here, they've got an ad. This is kind of distracting if you're reading an article. Sometimes there's ads on the sides over here. You see one right here. So this is how it looks normally. I'm sorry, normally. This is when I'm using AdBlock Plus. If you look here, there's a little number 8 right over there. It's saying that it's blocking 8 ads right now. This is without AdBlock Plus. So you want to use an ad blocking program if you want to focus a little better. That will be helpful. I have not had issues with saving things to Pocket through when I'm using AdBlock Plus. So let's say I click on this one right here, and I want to save this for later. I just click on that right there. That's going to save it to Pocket. I can open Pocket now, and there is my article right there. So I haven't had that issue. We had a question about whether or not I'm having issues saving using Pocket. Now, let's, again, we're talking about news aggregator apps. These are mobile apps. When iPad, iPhone, Android devices, these are some very popular ones. They also work very similar to Feedly, where you could save different types of content and have it delivered to you in an aggregator type fashion. Now, news aggregators are very, very helpful. If you, some people are familiar with one of the first and most popular news aggregator websites was Drudge Report. This came out a number of years ago. They were the ones that broke the Monica Lewinsky story, or they were one of the first sites to really focus on that kind of coverage, and they become a very popular news site. This is drudgereport.com. Now, if you're not into using Drudge Report, there's a lot of other news aggregators out there. I'm just mentioning this one because it's a very popular one. However, people are always trying to make sure they get information that isn't extremely biased. It's hard to find websites that don't have some sort of bias to them. It's very hard to be completely neutral for anybody. One of my favorite aggregator websites is you can see a list of them here, but the company that does realcleartechnology.com, realclearmarkets.com, realclearpolitics.com, and so on and so forth. They have a number of different sites that focus on these different topics. And one of the things I like about these news sites, they do a very good job of curating their content. And also, I've noticed they do a pretty good job of, usually showing both sides of a certain issue. So let's say you're into, politics, and there's one person that's writing an article that's for this particular issue and one person writing against this particular issue. Same thing when we're talking about markets. With markets, there's people that have all sorts of different opinions. So one person might say that, the price of gold is going to continue going higher. Some people might say it's going to continue going lower. They'll usually show both articles, and usually they're pulling from pretty useful. So if I go to realcleartechnology.com, inside the Google Maps operation, they'll show something from Wired, something from the Washington Post, something from Yahoo Tech, USA Today, Business Insider, Computer World, New York Times, Gizmodo. These are all reputable technology sites, and they do a good job of aggregating and curating the content. Nice thing also is you see how there's a morning edition here? So they'll do a morning edition, and this right here is the afternoon edition, and they do this on a daily basis. So again, just one of the sites that I like to check out for aggregating content. Again, there's so many news sites that are out there. I like to use this one because it does a good job of pulling information for various things that I'm interested. For me, it's usually I like keeping track of technology, markets, science, and world. But if you're interested in keeping track of sports, or these are some more niche topics, if books, energy, history. So check this out when you get a chance. You might find it helpful. Let's talk about organizing our tasks, because when we're working online, sometimes, most of your work is being done online. How do we go about organizing our tasks? One of my favorite things to do, and I started doing this a number of years ago, and I found it's helped me to become a lot more productive than I used to be, is picking 3 of the most important tasks, no more than 3 per day. I like to call this my MITs. MITs meaning most important tasks. Now, I actually learned this from I do want to make mention of who I learned this from. This was from Leo Babauta. He's the author of the popular blog ZenHabits.com. It's a productivity blog, and this was actually introduced to me from his posts. And MIT just stands for most important tasks. What are the 3 most important things you need to get done today? Now, it doesn't have to be exactly 3. There might only be one major thing you need to get done. Now, I know some people are thinking right now, well, I've got 53 different things that I need to get done, or I've got much more than 3 things. I've got a huge to-do list. This is all about prioritizing and figuring out what are the 3, if I had to pick 3 things that are the most important that I really need to get done today, what are they? Because what happens is sometimes you have so many things to do, and there's that one thing that you really need to get done. And it's very easy to procrastinate on that. It's very easy to push that off to the side because, sometimes there are things that you need to get done, but you don't want to do them. Why? Because maybe they take, a lot of effort, or maybe they're very difficult. The whole point of this MIT and figuring out what are my most important things I need to get done is getting that out of the way as early as possible. So some people, they get into the habit of every single day they get to the office, they start their working hours, and they begin with email. It's the first thing they do. It's not always the best way to be productive. And actually, I've had issues of, years ago, I used to always check my email first thing in the morning. I'd grab breakfast and I'd be eating my breakfast and have my laptop in front of me and I'd be checking my email. And what's happening here is, first of all, I'm multitasking. I'm trying to eat a breakfast meal, and I'm also trying to check my email. I'm doing both very poorly. I'm eating, let's say I'm having some cereal, some milk is splashing on the screen. This is not the best way to be productive. So again, focus on one thing at a time, but also, do you really have to check email? Does that have to be the first thing that you do? I started pushing email off to the side and actually not completely ignoring it, but do this within your limits. Obviously, whatever position you're in right now and the type of work that you do, you have to make this work for you. But I think a lot of people, they don't have to make email the first thing that they do. And focus on those 3 MITs, write them down. You can just keep it on a sheet of paper if you want, keep it simple, and focus on getting those done. And you'll be surprised at how psychologically satisfied you'll be when you get one of those things or 2 or 3 things done before you focus on, the usual things like checking email, going to different meetings and things like that. Now, another thing that you can do is if you're looking for a program to organize your tasks, there's something called Google Tasks. If you already have Gmail, you already have Google Tasks. It also works within Google Calendar, so you can use this in whatever that way that you want. Google Tasks also has a number of mobile apps and browser extensions. Question was, I just had a question here that came in. What was the name of the productivity blog that I mentioned? It was Zen Habits. And I think that's zenhabits.com. I don't know if it's a .net, .com, .org. I'm pretty sure it's zenhabits.com that you can check that out. Now, back to Google Tasks. Works in Gmail, works in Google Calendar, integrates with a lot of different mobile apps. If you're not sure what those mobile apps are called, just do a search in the App Store or Google Play Marketplace for Google Tasks. And if you want to use a very, Google Tasks is a very simple to-do list program. And if let's say you use Google Calendar very often, it can be used very easily. Actually, I'll show you real quickly. In Google Calendar, it would appear under one of your calendars right here. So you see where it says Tasks, you would just click on that right there, and you'll see it pop up over here. Now, if you're wondering why mine is blank, I don't actually use Google Tasks for my to-do lists, but some people like to use Google Tasks. So this is if you want something very simple. The program that I use for tasks is actually a program we're going to talk about in a moment here. But let's talk about Evernote, because you can use this for organizing your tasks as well. You can have a notebook within Evernote that's just called Tasks, and you can add your various tasks in there if you wanted to. Or another program, if you're working with a team. For me, one of the things I use internally here at Iris is a program called Asana. If you go to asana.com, you can use this for yourself personally. This works really well if you're working with a group of people, let's say 2, 3, or more people, and you've got different projects that need to get done. Certain people are responsible for different things in the project. Asana is a great way to stay organized and get those things done. So again, we talked about a number of things. You can use Google Tasks, you can use Evernote, you can use Asana. I've used all of these programs at one point or another, and they're all very, very useful. Which one you use is kind of based on personal preference, but all of them are very powerful, very robust. Now let's talk about email, because all of us, when we're dealing with our online life, this is something that everyone pretty much has to deal with. how do we stay on top of our email, keep it organized? Usually there's too much of it coming in. And I hope your inbox doesn't look like this with 17,488 or, topping out at the 999 level. But one thing is just sending less email will result in you getting less email. I know some people have to send a lot of emails, but there are sometimes people will send unnecessary emails. Remember years ago, you'd be so happy when you got an email. I remember first email account I think I had was with AOL, and they'd have that "you've got mail," and you'd be so excited. And then you started realizing all the spam you started getting, and now it's not so. Now we're excited if we get like a letter in the mail, or maybe not just a letter in the mail, but like an actual handwritten letter. If you send less email, you'll get less email. Sometimes people send unnecessary replies. Sometimes people will be, someone will say, "Hey, can you work on this?" Someone will say, "Okay, thanks." And the person will reply, "Thank you." And the other person will reply, "You're welcome." This is a little bit too much here. Also, we had a question coming in. Sorry to stop the webinar. I just want to address certain questions that are coming in. Can you show how you pulled up tasks on Google again? Sure thing. I'll show you real quickly. So if you were inside of Google Calendar, you would click on tasks over here. It's part of your calendars. I have a calendar for birthdays here. I have a calendar for a class schedule here. I have a calendar for reminders here. I've got a calendar right here called tasks. Now, I don't use this particular thing, but if you wanted to, Google has this by default included in your list. This is a list that you should find it under My Calendars on the left-hand side. And if you click tasks, I'll click it right now. It'll show up on the right-hand side right over there. And you could add your tasks right here. So this could be task 1, task 2, task 3. If I hit the tab button, I can have a subtask right here, subtask 1, subtask 2, and so on and so forth. And you could have as many tasks as you want, and you could also have different types of task items, so you can create different types of lists and so on and so forth. So check that out when you get a chance. Also, when you're writing emails, you want to be concise. Don't write extremely. We're not writing literature here. Sometimes people will send longer than necessary emails. So one, you want to be concise on your end, but you can't count on other people always being concise. Sometimes people will send you an extremely ridiculously long email. So how do we deal with long emails? I've gotten long emails before. And one of the things I've gotten emails that are much longer than this, by the way. But if you get a long email like this, one thing I like to do as a shortcut is I'll press Command F. That's the find function on a Mac, or you could do Control F on a PC, and I'll search for question marks. Why do I search for question marks? If someone types out a really, really long email to me, the first thing I want to know is, okay, what are they really asking me? Usually that's like me previewing and getting an idea of what is this email really about. I'll still read the email because I want to make sure I don't miss anything. But if I can find the question mark, that will usually give me the most important information. And rather than, because not everyone writes well, sometimes people, rather than writing, in paragraphs, they'll write you one giant 140-line paragraph email. How do you find the most important information there? I like to look for question marks. That usually leads me to it. You can't always count on that, but this could also work if you're dealing with recently we expanded our office space. So we were doubling our office space, and I had this lease document that was sent to me as a PDF. And the most important information for me to look through in a 110-page lease was a $sign. I wanted to find all the $signs, so I just did Command F, and it would search for all the $signs. So again, it's either Control F or Command F that usually works. It's the find function on your computer or in the program that you're using, and find the $signs or find the question marks. And that's usually what I use Command F a lot of times, and it speeds things up. Also, if you're dealing with a ton of email, I would suggest turning off email notifications. This can be very distracting. Remember how we talked about doing one thing at a time and trying to avoid multitasking? Well, if you have email notifications set up, it's easy to get distracted. You can't help but multitask because you'll have that little notification that gets your attention, and all of a sudden, instead of reading that article, now you're checking your email. And then you find out it was just an unimportant email, and then you try to get back to reading the article, you're wondering where were you, or you have a million tabs open and you're wondering where was that article, what tab was it in. So avoid email notifications unless you absolutely need to respond to emails as soon as you get them. Like if you were in a customer service role and you had to get back to people right away, then I understand you want to keep email notifications on. But otherwise, it's a good idea to turn them off. This also includes on your phone. I remember when I first got a smartphone, I was so excited to get email notifications. I thought I was going to be the most productive person in the world because once I got an email, I would immediately respond. And then, of course, you realize how many emails you get on a daily basis, and most of them don't even warrant a response because maybe they're marketing emails or they're just newsletters you signed up for. So I would suggest turning off email notifications on the phone and on your computer if you can. Also, once you start processing your email, one of the things I like to do first is start with the easiest ones. So I'll get rid of any emails that need to be archived or trashed first. I'll reply to any emails that can take less than a minute. And then, of course, anything that's, a reference email. Sometimes you get reports that maybe you don't have time to read them right now, but you got to refer to them later on. I'll usually put them in, create either a notification, a reference email, or a folder or a label. This depends. We use Gmail internally here at Iris. We use a Google Apps for Business program. But if you're using Outlook or any other email program for that matter, just create a folder or a label for this. Now, it's also very important to not get addicted to email because some people do. They get used to, they check email in the morning, then they're checking it on their phone, on their commute, and then they check email while they get to the office. They go to use the bathroom, they check the email one more time. It's very easy to get addicted to email. Sometimes people are checking email because they're procrastinating. I've done this before. I think all of us have at some point. It's easy to, sometimes you don't want to work on a certain project because it's very difficult. So why not check email, see if anybody got back to me? So try to avoid using email as an excuse for procrastination. If you have now a ton of emails, let's say you have an inbox that has over 1,000 emails right now, and let's say most of those, a lot of them you've responded to, you've seen, but you just want to get a clean inbox. One of the things I recommend you do is create a Backburner folder. Here's what I mean by this. This could be a folder or a label. When I say labels, I'm referring to Gmail. Folder if you're using maybe Outlook or another program. But Backburner just means I'm going to take all of this junk that I have in my inbox and I'm going to just throw it in this folder because I don't even want to look at it because it's causing me anxiety just staring at an inbox that has over 1,000 emails every single day. So you get it out of sight so you no longer have that anxiety. And at some point, of course, you want to make certain that you set some time to actually clear through that information. But when you're creating this Backburner folder, maybe you put all of anything that's over a month old, put it in there, or more than 2 weeks old, put it in there. And then, of course, set a time limit on how much time you're going to spend in your inbox. Some people are in their inbox all day just waiting for emails to come in. And it's, not the most important way to be productive. Oh, by the way, we had a question coming in from Daniel. Copies of these slides will be available, and everyone that registered for the webinar will get these emailed to them within 24 hours. So thanks for asking that question. Now, setting limits on your inbox, very important. It's very easy to just sit around the inbox and wait for emails. That's when we're talking about productivity, you can think of productivity in two ways, proactive and reactive. Reactive is you reacting to stuff. I get an email, I react. Proactive is, okay, I'm actually thinking, what do I need to work on? And before I check my email, I'm going to be proactively work on something. Now, also, we had a question coming in about whether or not this will be replayed. You'll get a copy of the recording within 24 hours of this webinar. So don't worry about if you have any issues, you'll get a copy of the recording. Also, checking email at specific times. This can be a useful way to stay a little more productive. Again, I realize not all these tips are going to work for every single individual, but I want to give you some ideas and options and things that I've done to make myself a little more productive with email. I tried to avoid checking email first thing in the morning. I'll try to leave it off until maybe 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock. You might want to do the same. Work on those most important tasks first and then check your email. And again, do this based on, your types of duties. If you're in customer service and you got to check email first thing in the morning, I understand. But for me, usually I've got something important that I need to work on first, and then I'll check my email later on. One of the things I've been doing is I'll check my email at 10 o'clock and 2 o'clock. Now, for some people, that might not be often enough. For some people, you might only need to check your email once a day, but a lot of people will get just stuck inside of that inbox. I also want to make mention of action versus reference. There are some emails that are actionable. You need to reply to them. And there are some things that are just reference, like, coupons and deals that you get, different notifications about events or filed reports. Those are all reference related emails. Actionable ones are things that obviously I need to, reply to this person, or I need to get something done as a result. So one of the things I suggest doing is creating, this actually works pretty well for me. Create a reply by day folder or label. Here's what I mean by reply by. In Gmail, if you're using Gmail, you can use something called nested labels. So here is one label called reply by. You see how there's a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Here's what this means. In my inbox, some of these emails I might not be able to reply to right away. Some of these emails I might not be able to reply to this person until Monday or until Wednesday when I have more information. So what I'll do with that email is I'll read it, and either I'll tell them that I'll get back to them by Wednesday and I'll put it in the Wednesday label, or maybe I don't have to get back to them right away and I could just move that into the Wednesday label. And what happens is every single day when I first check my email, I'll make sure if it's a Wednesday, I'm going to check my inbox, obviously, but I'll also check my Wednesday label to see, okay, is there anybody I need to get back to today that I said I was going to get back to them today, or I put it in there earlier? This will kind of serve as a reminder. So I try to keep my inbox limited as much as possible. And if I got to reply to someone at a later date, I'll put them in whatever appropriate label is appropriate for that email. Here's how you do nested labels in Gmail if you're wondering. First of all, you click on Settings. Then you click on Labels. By the way, all these slides will be available to you guys if you're wondering. After you click on Labels, you just create a brand new label. And then you put a name for the label. And you see that little box right there, Nest the Label Under. So that's where you could have like a category and a subcategory. Or in this case, they're calling them a label, and then a nested label. So it's like a category, subcategory, and that's where you can create those different, you see how I had them like this? You do that through the nested labels. So I have a reply by label, and nested underneath that is a 1 Monday, 2 Tuesday, 3 Wednesday. Why do I have these numbered? It's because Google will sort these alphabetically. So that's why I have the numbers at the beginning. So again, Settings, Labels, create new label, and then make sure you check that box where the red arrow is. Now, templates or canned responses. If you have certain emails that you always send to people over and over again, it's a good idea to create a canned response or a template. And of course, you can modify these templates, but this will save you some typing time. In Gmail, you just click Settings for this. You go to Labs. By the way, the Labs area is a very interesting area. A lot of useful tools in there. You might want to explore that. But you can look for canned responses. When you click on Labs under the Settings area, you want to enable canned responses. What that will help you do is next time you send an email, you just click on that little arrow on the bottom right, and it will enable an area called canned responses. What that will do is allow you to insert a canned response. This is just a response that you think of it as a template, something that maybe you're sending very, very often. That's a quick way to get that set up. Also, in the email, it's a good idea to utilize filters. I think of filters as like kind of like a funnel where you get information coming in and it can automatically be processed. If you're dealing with a lot of email, some email, instead of you doing it manually, you can have the program automatically filtered for you. Now, there are ways to utilize filters in a lot of different email programs. I'm going to go over Gmail because that's what I use. If you're using something else like Outlook, you could probably do a Google search on how to use filters in Outlook, and that will pop up. But here's how you do it in Gmail. You click on the little arrow at the top of the search box right there, and then you create your criteria for the search, and then you say create a filter with the search. So you might say, okay, all emails that I'm getting from, I've got here group on goods, I'm going to create a filter with the search, and I might say, all right, if it's coming from Groupon Goods, I want to apply the following label. And maybe I call that label deals or coupons or whatever. Or maybe you're getting emails from like travel sites. For me, I get emails from different airlines and different specials that come up. For me, I apply the label. I have a label called travel, and I'll automatically apply that. So I don't have to necessarily see them in my inbox, but I can look at them later on when I want to. So there's a lot of different things. You can say mark it as read, star it. You could say maybe you want to forward this automatically to someone when you get an email. You might want to delete it. You can say, never send it to spam. Or this is another interesting thing. If you get certain types of emails and they always need to warrant the same response, you can send a canned response. Remember we talked about that? You could automatically send a canned response to people if you wanted to. So creating filters can be a great way to automatically process your email. And also, if you get a lot of, if you subscribe to newsletters in your email, one of the things I recommend is get rid of your reading list. Get it out of your email. I like to keep my email as just for communication, back and forth communication, replying to people. That if I have any article, sometimes someone will email me an article that they are recommending that I read later. What I'll do is I'll just save it later using that Pocket application that I mentioned earlier. So, or if you want, you can use the Evernote application. Also, be sure to unsubscribe. Actually, I like to do this once a week where, I like to do it on Mondays because the email kind of stack. I try to avoid my email on weekends if I can. And on Monday, my inbox is kind of flooded. So I've got to unsubscribe to some stuff. I try to do this on Mondays because the email stacks up and I can say, okay, I remember, subscribing to that, but I no longer need to be subscribed to it. Unsubscribing can be very helpful. You'll cut down on your email. It will save you time. Also, create an email day. Here's what I mean by an email day. This is a day, if your inbox is overwhelming, this is a day to catch up. Or it could be a day to entirely ignore your email. There are some organizations that I've been reading about that are doing this, where they'll have an ignore email day, and all they do is they'll talk to each other in person. Of course, this is people that are within the office, and it will ignore, or the company will block email. Now, of course, this is not practical for every organization to do, but it might just be a certain department. But again, we're talking about going back to personal interaction. Also with email, we talked about this earlier. Learn keyboard shortcuts. This can really speed up the amount of time that you spend in your inbox, especially if you're already a fast typer. Learn the Gmail shortcuts, or if there are shortcuts in Outlook and that's the program you use, learn whatever keyboard shortcuts you can, and that will also speed up the process. If you want to enable keyboard shortcuts in Gmail, that's something you have to actually do. Here's how you do it. You go to Settings. You go under the General tab. You see the General tab right there. And you'll see right there, it says keyboard shortcuts. You just got to make sure that's on. It is not on by default in Gmail. You need to actually turn it on. And once you turn it on, you'll have it enabled. Also, there's a very useful send and archive function in Gmail. Again, this is something that you get inside of Google Labs. So you go to Settings, and then you click on Show Send and Archive button. Here's what this does, by the way, send and archive. When you reply to someone's email, that email is still in your inbox. So you need to do another click or two to actually delete or archive it. What this will do, sometimes you just want to send it and automatically archive. This will give you that button right there. So instead of just saying send, it'll say send, and you see that little icon, that means archive. Or if you don't want to archive it, you could still just press the send button. That's it. But I find this to be a time saver. Again, it's just saving me a few clicks, but as you would imagine, these clicks start to add up. Here's another useful tool that I use in Gmail. It's the undo send button. Undoing a send can be very helpful. Sometimes you send something and you realize I forgot to say something, or I shouldn't have sent that email. So we're getting a question that's coming in from Joe. I want to address it. Do you have to have a Gmail address to use Gmail? Not necessarily. I actually use this using pnoack@irisreading.com. So this is something called Google Apps for businesses. Google also has this for government agencies. Just search for Google Apps and you'll see how you can actually tie it into whatever email that you have. So, but yeah, if you have Gmail, you could have it at Gmail, or you could have it at your domain or at your business or your government agency or your nonprofit. So that's Google Apps for Business, or just search for Google Apps if you want to get something like this enabled. And normally there's a Gmail logo up here. You could replace this with your organization's logo if you wanted to. Now, remember we were talking about undo send? Sometimes you send an email and you accidentally sent it too quickly. You can click on Settings. If you want to enable this, go to Settings, then click on Labs. After you get to Labs, you want to enable the undo send button. Undo send, this is very helpful. Again, like we said, sometimes you send an email and you forgot to attach something. Well, this will actually give you 10 seconds. The default is 10 seconds. You could actually change that if you want. You can undo the send and reattach that document that you forgot to attach. It'll give you 10 seconds to do it. So once you hit send, you'll get something like this. It'll send, it'll say your message has been sent. And if you say, forgot something, you just click the undo button. That'll be up there by default for 10 seconds. And if you want to extend it, you just go to the options for that feature. Now, one other thing. Remember we talked about keyboard shortcuts within Gmail? You could do a Google search for those keyboard shortcuts. So one of them, like the letters J and K, allow you to go up and down. The letter E, archive something. But what if you don't like the fact that E is to archive? What if that doesn't make sense to you? What if you want it to be the letter A? You can enable this particular keyboard shortcuts, custom keyboard shortcuts thing in, again, this is in Gmail Labs, custom keyboard shortcuts. Just click enable, and you can enable whatever you want. If you want A to archive emails, then you can do that. Another useful Gmail Labs feature is Google Calendar Gadget. If you want to be able to look at your calendar within your email, you can actually enable that. Again, that's in Google Labs, inside of Gmail Labs. You just hit enable, and that will show your calendar inside of your Gmail. So the main thing I'm trying to get across here is to, make sure that you're able, how to control your email and that you don't let it control you. Think about it. We weren't really taught, most people are not taught how to manage their email when they're in school. It's something that we, either we've got to figure it out or we learn little things from, other people. I've learned a number of these tricks from a number of friends and colleagues. So again, you pick these things up as you go, and you want to make sure that email does not, consume you. You don't want to get addicted to it. One more thing we want to discuss in this webinar, organizing your thinking. When you're online, ideas pop up. You want to have a place to save them. I want to go over brainstorming because one way that you can brainstorm very effectively is by using mind mapping. Mind mapping is just a visual way to organize your notes. A mind map, generally speaking, looks something like this, where you have a main point in the middle, and then you have, these. Let me give you an example. This might be the chapter title. Let's say you're reading a book and you want to take notes visually using a mind map. This is your chapter title. These are your headings. Heading, heading, heading. Now, what about your subheadings? Well, if this is your heading right here, this might be a subheading. This might be a subheading. You might have 3 subheadings. So now, there are a lot of ways to create a mind map. Obviously, you can do this for taking notes on what you're reading. You could also, I've used mind maps to brainstorm topics when I'm preparing for a presentation. Sometimes when I'm doing a presentation, actually I did a mind map before we started this webinar. Before I even created all of the slides for this webinar, I started off with creating a mind map because that was an easy way for me to quickly organize my information in a non-linear way. And then once I have a bird's eye view of, let's say this is my whole presentation, it's very easy for me to take each one of these things and start putting them in order. You could use this for, again, note-taking, presentation, organizing your presentation ideas, maybe writing a paper, or even organizing a project. I've even used mind maps for project management, for task management. There are some useful programs you can use. There's a lot of mind mapping programs out there, by the way. And I'm not saying I know of every single one, but I've used a lot of them. My 2 favorite ones at the moment are Xmind and MindMeister. Let me talk about each one here. Xmind. This works on a Mac or a PC, and this is downloadable. What that means is you will be saving your mind maps to your computer. I'll show you how Xmind works in a moment. MindMeister, this is web-based. So this is desktop-based, for Mac or PC. This is web-based. If you're someone that loves using, web-based programs like Google Docs and you want to save things in the cloud, MindMeister is great because you can save things in the cloud. Here's the other difference between these 2 programs, Xmind versus MindMeister. Xmind has a free version that is very robust. Honestly, I think most people, probably 90% of people, do not need their premium version. The Xmind free version works very, very well. If you want to look into the premium version and check that out, you can. I've been using the free version for a while and it works great. That's if you want to save notes locally to your hard drive. But you might want to use MindMeister. I use MindMeister when we're collaborating internally here at Iris. If we're brainstorming something, we'll use MindMeister because it's web-based. You can share the mind maps. They're stored online. So let me show you each one real quickly. Xmind looks like this. Let me launch Xmind here. When you launch a program, and actually I think I need to upgrade to the latest version. Yep, I'll upgrade later. Here's how it works. Central topic. I click on this, create your topic. So this might be your chapter name if you were reading something, and then you click tab to create a topic, or you click one of these buttons up here. Tab is just a quick way for me to add, this might be a section. This might be one of the headings of the section. So this might be heading 1. This is heading 2. This might be heading number 3. If I have subtopics, I'll add those subtopics like this. So you can see how quickly and easily, and by the way, you can do that. I'm doing this just with the keyboard shortcuts right here. I'm just using my arrow keys and the tab button. Tab, by the way, if I hit tab, that creates another topic. So this might be, heading number 4 in my chapter, and it has its subtopics associated with it. You could link to things here. There are all these different icons. There's a lot of options in here. I'm not going to go over all of them in this webinar. You can explore it, but this is if you wanted to use it on the desktop. Now, MindMeister, on the other hand, is web-based. So let me show you real quickly MindMeister. If you log in, the difference here, MindMeister, they have a free trial, but then I believe it's around $4 or $5 a month. So if you're looking for something totally free, I would definitely recommend going the Xmind route. If you don't mind paying $4 or $5 a month and you want something web-based, MindMeister is a great option. So here's how MindMeister looks when you log in. You can have all your mind maps shared over here. And then if you want to create a new mind map, you just click like that. There's some templates you see right here. I'm just going to click blank. And again, we can do the same exact thing where this might be, the chapter name. Here's heading number 1, heading number 2, heading number 3. And you see how this is organizing it very easily. And of course, you can drag and drop these things. You might say, hey, actually, this goes over here. This goes over here. Add some subtopics underneath these things if you wanted to. So that's how you use MindMeister. If you want to share the mind map, you just go down here, share. And again, there's a lot of options. This might have a nicer interface for you, but again, I want to show you 2 options because you may or may not want to have your things stored on the cloud. You might want to store them on your computer because maybe you don't always have an internet connection. So Xmind is useful if you want a desktop version, MindMeister if you want something that is web-based. Also, one other program that I find very, very helpful when I'm trying to stay focused online is a program called Stay Focused. This is actually purposely misspelled. I'm not sure why they are dropping the E, but let me show you what this program does. Main thing does, block time wasting websites. You ever go to Facebook and tell yourself, I just want to, stay on top of what my friends are doing. You go on there, you tell yourself you're only going to spend 5 minutes, and all of a sudden, you are, you've been on Facebook for like half an hour, and you're wondering, why am I still on Facebook? This is where Stay Focused comes in. So the program, this is a Google Chrome extension, by the way. So this only works on Google Chrome. So let me show you. If you go to the Chrome Web Store, and actually I think you could just search for Stay Focused on Google, but if you go right here, it will pull it up. There it is right there. Now I already have this installed. Let me show you where it is. You see on the top right, you see this little blue button right here? Let me open the options. I right click and click options. Now, here's the main thing. You see blocked sites? If I go to blocked sites, this is where I can add blocked sites like Facebook or YouTube. Now, what does that mean if I'm adding something here? It just means that I want to limit the amount of time I spend on these particular sites. So I add Facebook and YouTube on there because it's very easy for me to get caught up and spend too much time there. So I try to limit my daily allowance. Now, I know there are ways around this, but this is a good way to keep yourself focused. You see the thing that says max time allowed up here? If I click on that, see how it says 30 minutes? You can change this to whatever you want. But this is telling me I'm going to spend 30 minutes max on these blocked sites. So after 30 minutes, it won't allow me to spend any more time. So let me show you what I mean. If I go to facebook.com right now, and you'll see I've got that set up here. Notice what happened. Remember that blue button? It's now red. Why is it red? If I click on it, notice it's counting down from 30 minutes. It tells me I only have 29 minutes left. Now, this is actually very useful because after 30 minutes, I want to make sure that I'm not spending any additional time. I don't want to spend an hour or an hour and a half on Facebook every single day because I need to get things done. But it's very easy to get, spend too much time there. Now, let me show you what happens when let's say I needed to add more time. If you change this 30, let's say you started running out of time and you said, you know what, I need an additional 10 minutes. Let me change it to 40. And you hit set. It'll tell you, you're trying to give yourself more time. You sure that's a good idea? Maybe you should reconsider. Are you sure you want to increase maximum time allowed? I'll click OK, and it'll tell me, seriously, dude, the whole point of this extension is to stop you from procrastinating. You're only hurting yourself, and the kitten gets an electric shock every time you click OK. Are you sure you can live with yourself? I click OK, and it says, meow, I hope you're happy. Okay, and then it'll say your settings are updated. Now, I know that this is a kind of a way of kind of like self-control here. It'll give you a little guilt trip if you try to change this. Oh, we've got a mention here that's coming from Jaisin. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right, and I apologize if I'm not. But he mentioned self-control is also a great app for Mac that blocks websites. So if anybody's interested in that, it's called Self-Control, and it's a great app for Mac that blocks websites. So I'm glad you're mentioning that. There's a lot of different tools that are out there, and I don't claim to know every single one of them that are out there. But this Stay Focused tends to be very, very helpful. And it's on the issue of self-control. So Jay, thank you so much for recommending that. That was from Jay. And let's see what happens when I change this setting. Remember how it was counting down here? Well, let's say I change the setting to something like, just give me 2 minutes. You see how it says, you're giving yourself less time? Slow clap. Well played, my friend. Thank you. I'll click OK. And watch what happens when I go to Facebook now. It turns red. Now, we only have so much time left. Oh, it's giving me a minute. Let me change it so there's only a minute left because I want to show you what happens when you do run out of time. So I changed it to 1 minute. We don't have that much time left. And of course, when time runs out, I'm not going to be able to access this site anymore. Also, we have a comment coming in from Denise on Outlook. There's an Outlook tip that she's given us. You can create a rule to delay delivery of emails for a period of minutes defined by you. It sits in the outbox for that period of time, and it can be a lifesaver. Thank you, Denise, for mentioning that. That is a delay rule in Outlook. That would be very useful. Now, notice what happened over here. Shouldn't you be working? If I try to go back to facebook.com, I'm going to get this message. And that's just a nice little reminder for me. Oh, yeah, I should be working. I've spent enough time on Facebook. Now, obviously, there are ways around this. You could go to another browser. You could disable that extension. But again, this is just a way to kind of remind you to, hey, it's like keeping a check on your time. So check out Stay Focused when you get a chance. Now, what we've gone over in this webinar, we went through a lot of different things. First of all, we talked about reading, saving your articles through Pocket or using something like Feedly, Evernote. We also talked about organizing your tasks. We've also talked about managing your email. And lastly, we talked about organizing your thinking. I wanted to do a quick summary, and we've gone over a lot of different things. The main thing, what I want you to do going forward is, implement some of these things that you found useful. Maybe it was the MIT concept. Remember MIT, most important task. Maybe you like that. Maybe that works well for you. I would suggest implementing these things as soon as you can. I'm not saying everything in this webinar is going to be perfect for everyone. Not everyone is a Gmail user. What if you're working somewhere where they use Outlook and you have to use that program? Well, there's different things that you can use for Outlook. I hope you found some of these tips and strategies useful. If you have additional questions or comments and you want to reach out to me, by all means, feel free. If you've got a certain program that you would recommend that that I didn't mention here that you find very helpful, I'd love to hear from you. I'm always interested in looking at these different apps and tools. Thank you so much for attending the webinar. You can reach out to me by email. And again, Enjoy the rest of your day. Oh, and by the way, if you like what we're doing here at Iris, please tell your friends about us. We're doing a lot more with speed reading live classes across the US and abroad. We're also doing a lot of online courses. So again, thank you so much for attending. Please spread the word about us if you like us. If you don't like what we're doing, please tell your enemies about us because that'll show them. And again, enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks again for attending.